And so my husband came home from work and I said, Bob, you're not going to believe this. They want me to run for office. And he said, absolutely not. I thought, I can't leave him out. So my slogan was family, faith, and freedom. And so I just said, that's who I am. So I kind of put it out there, and believe it or not, I mean, not surprising, my opponent still attacks me about that.
Yeah.
Separation of church and state is not in the Constitution. That was a letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote. And so they're really, and it was never God's intention. He wants to be a part of everything we do. People close. Our job is to love. And so there's a high calling on us to just be the ones that love. And even, with my opponent, I pray for my opponent,
Hey, welcome to the Salty Christians YouTube channel. My name is Matt. And before we jump into this conversation with Anne Ferrell Tata, Delegate Anne Ferrell Tata, I wanted to tell you a little bit more about this YouTube channel and the mission and the goal of it. Really, it comes down to the Bible verse, Matthew 5:13-16, where Jesus says, we are the salt of the earth and the light of the world. And what does that look like in everyday, modern day life? And today we're going to talk about what that looks like in the role of government. Many people say politics, but God never called us to be into politics and politicking, but he does call some of us into politics. And so even if you're not interested in politics, or maybe you think Christians shouldn't be in politics and government, watch this episode. I think you're going to be encouraged by what Anne Ferrell shares. Even she didn't want to be in the public limelight and in government, but you'll hear through her story how God called her, and now she's being salt and light as a delegate in the state of Virginia. And so I think you're going to get something out of this. And then also, who should I interview next? What people, it could be a specific person, comment below, or it could be like a certain walk of life, a certain part of public life that might be interested to see how does a Christian live out their faith? How are they salt and light in that sphere of influence that they have? So please comment below and let's get started with this episode of Salty Christians. So we worked together about 6-7 years ago, and you were not delegate. And so first, tell me what a delegate is. It's in Virginia. So you represent the 99th district. Right. What does that entail?
So in Virginia, we are, first of all, it's the state house, basically, the state House of Representatives. And in Virginia, we're the oldest lawmaking body in the whole Western Hemisphere. The only one older is England.
Oh, wow.
So where we sit and make laws is where Thomas Jefferson and Patrick Henry and James Madison and George Washington at one time served. So we are the state House of Representatives, and kind of a throwback to that time, we're called the House of Delegates. And Virginia is a commonwealth, which really is not a big difference. There are 4 in the country, 4 commonwealths, and Virginia is the Commonwealth of Virginia. So I serve in the House of Delegates, and there are about 8.5 million people in Virginia, and there are 100 of us in the House, 40 in the Senate. So each of the House members represent about 85,000 people. And so my district is 85,000 people, and it's the northeast part of Virginia Beach.
Okay. And you were elected in
2021. I first served in 22. Yeah, and Virginia is interesting. We're in the off cycle. New Jersey and Virginia, we have our governor's race on the off cycle. So this year we're having a governor's race in the majority of the states. It's last year or next year. So the first year I was elected with Glenn Youngkin, and who is a amazing man of God. And he kind of he was very successful with the Carlisle group, and then really felt called by God to run for office. And so he's our governor. So I started at the same time he did.
Okay, great. So I'm going to get to the moment when you felt called to jump into government. I'm trying to change my vernacular because I'm used to saying politics.
Yeah.
But one of my previous guests on Salty Christians shared that as Christians, we don't want to be in the political, but we want to be in lawmaking and government.
Right. Yeah, because God is not political. But he is governmental. And you think about all the laws that we have are from the Bible. They're from God. And so Isaiah 33:22, it really describes our method of government. God is king, God is lawmaker, and God is judge. And that's the basis of who we are. So yeah, he's not political, but he is governmental.
Okay. So before we get to that, because I think your story is going to inspire other people who, not everyone's called to get into the government. Not those who are, I want them to see this. And that's kind of the purpose of this YouTube channel, is to highlight, I call it Salty Christians, who are being salt and light in all walks of life. But before we get to your journey with the past few years, give people just kind of a high level
your background, who you are, and what led you up to 2021. You decided to run.
So my husband and I have been married 40 years this year. We have 4 children, three grandchildren. And I was a daughter of an army chaplain, so I moved around a lot. My mom was a school teacher, kind of typical American family. There's 6 of us in the family. I'm number three, oldest daughter, but third child. And I've done a number of things. I was in medical sales for a long time. I've always worked. I've always been a working mom. So I worked in pharmaceutical sales for a long time, and then I got into K-Love. I really felt called
Yeah.
to work for K-Love, and I've had a number of jobs and a number of bosses at K-Love. Right now, I work for our chief of media, all of media. So I've done that for 14 years now, and that's where I knew you from that time. And one thing about serving in the House of Delegates, we're Virginia, like a lot of states, not all states, but a lot of states, we're a part-time legislature. So they really want the legislators to have full-time jobs. And this goes back to, again, the 1700s when or 1600s when it all started. They wanted people to come, leave their fields, leave their law practice, leave their country store, come and make the laws, and then go back and live your life. So,
The
so
time politics,
yeah,
weird politicians.
yes, exactly. So we still have that.
Awesome.
So anyway, so that's what brought me, and we've raised our 4 children. All 4 right now live out of our community. 2 are in 1 is in Virginia, the other 3 are not even in Virginia. So, and that's part of my story later, how I see how God kind of cleared the way, because it would be hard if all of our children lived there with grandchildren to do what I do.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. So, at what moment did you go, you know what? I think I'm going to enter into this political governmental sphere and be, because I know your character and who you are, and you're going into it from a biblical Christian point of view. Like you want to represent Christ in what you're doing.
Right.
And so that's why I'm excited to have you on this.
Well, and again, thank you for having me and inviting me. This was never in my wildest dreams. It was never something wanted to, aspired to do. I never thought about it. As a matter of fact, we've always been involved in politics on the backside. We would support candidates. We hosted meet and greets. We put signs in our yard. Of course, we always voted, made phone calls. I mean, we actually were involved that way. Always happy to be in the background, though. Never in a million years did I ever think to be the candidate. In fact, when I would go to things, I used to look at the candidate and go, "Gosh, I would thank God that's on me." So I had no interest. And in 2021, some members of the Republican Party came to me and they said, "We would like you to run." And I thought that's crazy. But what came out of my mouth was, "I will pray about it and I'll talk to my husband about it." But in my head, I was like, "There's no way." And I knew God had no interest in me doing this either. And so my husband came home from work and I said, "Bob, you're not going to believe this. They want me to run for office." And he said, "Absolutely not."
Mm.
He was like, "No way." And the reason he didn't want me to run is his father had been in the House of Delegates for 30 years. And he said, "And Farrell, I can't handle if they're mean to you and they make up stuff." And he said, I can't handle it. So no. And I was so happy. So I thought that was it. I go to bed that night, and this is gonna sound dramatic, but it is a true story. And in the middle of the night, I woke up, and I'm a sleeper. I don't have trouble sleeping, but I woke up, and all I heard, what I believed was God. I heard him say, "I thought you'd say yes." And I just thought, "God, is this you that's asking me to do this?" And, it was kind of quiet. And then I had 3 major objections in the night, in the middle of the night. One, I said, "I'm like Moses, I'm an introvert.
Mm.
I'm not a public speaker." I mean, to get up and speak in front of people was just, terrifying for me. And I call it verbal dyslexia. I get my words mixed up. So I thought, I'm not, just not, some people are natural speakers and some aren't. I was not, I was in the not natural speaker camp. And I just heard him say, "Trust me." And then number 2, I said, "How am I gonna raise money? It costs so much money to do that. We're not gonna self-fund this. How am I gonna raise money?" "Trust me." And the 3rd objection was our 3rd daughter at the time was getting married. And this was, remember, right after the COVID shutdowns, and Virginia, and she lived in DC, which was totally shut down still. Virginia was kind of shut down. There was one of those, you can have 250, you can have 20, you can have, it was all, they were all over the place. So we had decided that she was gonna have her wedding in Florida, which is where I'm from. And she had grown up in Ponte Vedra Beach where we used to take them when they were young. So it was familiar to her. And I thought, let's just get out of Virginia. Florida was open. We'll have the wedding down there. And so I said, but God, what about Riley's wedding? Trust me, each one. So the next morning I wake up and first still in that conversation with God, I started sobbing. I was crying so hard because I just thought, and this is good for, people to hear. Sometimes he asks us to do really hard things that are not in our comfort zone and that we think there is no way I can do this. And that was me. I thought there is no way I can do this. But I thought, so I was really overcome with emotion in the night. So I wake up the next morning and I said, Bob, I think I'm supposed to say yes to running. And so we agreed that we would pray about it together. And I didn't want anyone in Virginia influencing me. And thank goodness because of Caleb and, having family out of town, I had other people I could tap into. And so, I reached out to a number of friends and prayer warriors, and I said, I really feel like God's asked me to do this big thing, and I really need prayer because I want to make sure it is Him asking me. I knew it wasn't me, but I just wanted to make sure. So immediately after that, like that day, doors started opening. I get a text from a number that I didn't have in my phone, and it said, I heard you're thinking about running. I want to write your first check. And then I saw, 2 former governors of Virginia said, "We'll endorse you." I mean, just things started opening, and so throughout the week, I just more and more things were making it clear, but the final fleece was, "Will Caleb let me do this?" And I thought, "There's no way they'll allow me to do this." And at the time, I had a primary, so I wasn't even gonna be for sure the candidate, I was just gonna run in a primary. And so I called my boss and I said, I know this is going to sound crazy because it is, but they want me to run. And it was so funny. I was waiting for him to say no. And Bob and I had agreed that if he said no, I was going to say no. And so he said, and he even said, like, when he reflects on it, like he doesn't even know why, but he said, well, it's a primary, right? Like you don't even know you're going to win. I go, no. And he was like, well, why don't you go ahead and run and let's see what happens. And he goes, "And we'll figure it out." So, I was like and that's when I knew. I was like, "Okay, I've gotta run." And when I say God was with every single step, he equipped me, he provided. Our daughter's wedding was our 3rd child to get married, so this we had 2 other daughters who had had weddings, and this one by far, there was just something so special, and even the guests will say, "Gosh, there was something really special about that," and I thought, it's because God took care of every detail. He took care of the primary. I did win the primary. I did win the general election, and, God was just there opening doors, and it was funny because I had people praying over me through the whole thing. One of the first things I did is I established 2 sets of, intercessors because I thought there's no way I'm gonna do this without people praying for me. And because it's frontline, it's SEAL, it's a battlefield. It really is a battlefield, and they are mean, and they do say terrible things about you, and they do make up things. All of that true is true, but I I really needed intercessors, and so I got them in order, part of the original people that I reached out to, and they've stayed with me through 4 years. So I finished my 2nd term. I just announced my reelection for my 3rd term. So until God tells me to do something else, I'm staying at it.
Yeah. I did not know the whole backstory. That's
Yes.
beautiful. So, I mean, I keep on thinking of what's the quote? "God qualifies the called, doesn't or and equips
He
the
called
called."
those that he
Yeah.
calls, yeah. And I've talked to a really good friend of mine who is a natural speaker, amazingly talented and great voice, great presence, everything. And she said, she said, in a way, he can do more with somebody who is reluctant and just open to allow him to work through you. Because what if you see me on stage and if you see me giving a speech and you hear anything good, it is clearly from the Lord. It's not my nature. It just isn't. And I'm still, I get overwhelmed with big crowds, and I'm still an introvert, all that is still but who I am, but he just shows up when I need him to.
Yeah. I always share on this podcast, this YouTube channel, not sure what to call it yet, these conversations that I think as Christians, we love when we see the celebrity, the athlete, give credit to Jesus. And even politicians, I mean, politicians will do that, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're being salt and light by, being overt. So I just maybe do you have any stories of like where you've been able to be salt and light behind the scenes or in public? Like, I don't know how I've not seen your campaigns. Like, how out there are you? I'm a Christian and this is what I believe, or how much is just, you know what, you're gonna legislate and you're gonna lead from a biblical perspective.
Sure. So, well, the funny thing is when I first, agreed to do it, we had to get a team in place. And so we get a consultant because,
Mm.
that's how you do it. You have somebody come along and help you. And one of the first things my consultant, who was fabulous, but he said, you might want to tone down your faith. Cause I'm like, I had my own, Instagram was Of Great Worth, which was the book I'd written, Of Great Worth. So it was all about God. So I just thought I thought, God never wanted us to do things without him, right? Whether it's in the marketplace or in education or in the business, he wants to be a part of everything we do. So there's no way I could take him out. He's so much intertwined in my DNA that there's no way I could do anything without him. So I thought, I can't leave him out. So my slogan was family, faith, and freedom. And so I just said, that's who I am. So I kind of put it out there, and believe it or not, I mean, not surprisingly, my opponent still attacks me about that.
Yeah.
But separation of church and state is not in the Constitution. That was a letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote. And so they're really, and it was never God's intention. He wants to be a part of everything we do. So I have put myself out there, but the one thing about that is it puts me on a, they're always going to be looking to attack me. So when I have attacks from my opponent, which I did, and with each time I've run, I've had it, attacks. I do just, I don't engage in that, and I try to stay, just focused on what I'm doing and what I'm bringing to the table and what I have accomplished. And I really just try to ignore that. And in fact, one of my friend, one of the, a dear friend of mine, Denise Gitsom, wrote a book, Politics for People Who Hate Politics. And it's a great book.
I'll link it below on the
Yeah, please do, because I actually bought 140 of them
Okay.
for every member of the House and every member of the Senate
Mm.
when I served the last time, right after it came out. But it's basically about how do you, when you do put yourself out there and you are a believer and you're an ambassador for Christ and you represent Christ, you are on a different playing field. And so how you respond really does matter. And so I've really it's something it's always top of mind for me, and everything in my printed materials and interviews I do, and speaking, and how I serve with floor speeches and the legislation that I carry, everything is through, my faith, and it's a part of every single thing I do. And it's misunderstood by some, but and it's not, I'm not proselytizing. I'm not trying to make you believe that. I'm just saying this is my moral compass.
This is my worldview. This is
This is
coming
my
from.
exactly.
Well, and in Matthew 5:13, Jesus says we're salt of the earth and light
Yeah.
of the world. And I've done a lot of listening to sermons and breakdown of what salt is, and salt is a preserving agent, especially back in Jesus's time. So when he said that, people instantly knew, oh, as salt. And so as what you're doing is going to the highest, lamp, well, local. I guess you're more regional,
Right.
but you're creating laws that will preserve our society and will help people. And actually,
Right.
another component of salt is its seasoning, and it brings out life.
Right.
And so you're being able to like I've always had a passion for music and film and artists who are influencing our culture. But I've always wanted to talk to someone who's in government and flavoring society and helping, society thrive because of the biblical views that are being infused into our laws. So
Right.
thank you.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I mean, it's hard, again, it's hard not to
Yeah.
just be who you are and bring that into it. So, and it is a calling. We are called to do that.
Mhm.
God's really clear. So,
So for the person watching this on YouTube, YouTube is amazing, but also crazy because who knows who's going to watch this? And I know there's many Christians or non-Christians who are going to go separation of church and state, or you're not supposed to mix these two, and we get uncomfortable. Maybe what would you say to them, um, to the Christian who is uncomfortable with that, and then to the Christian who's going, I think I might be called.
well, to the Christian, I would say, and especially even to the pastors, and I say this, we have pastors that come to my office all the time. And what I would say to all of them is that our form of government, this democratic republic, is a gift from God. We were so blessed to have this form of government and to be born in this, not communism, not oligarchy, not monarchy, not all the other, forms of government, dictator. We have a wonderful blessing gift of this government. And what does God want us to do with that? Steward it, be grateful for that gift, thank him, praise him for that gift. And so what I say to Christians all the time is you have to do everything you can in your power. And sometimes it's only just to pray for our government. But this
Or
is
vote.
yeah, or vote.
That-
But do engage and do talk and don't be afraid to talk about it. That's part of what's happened is our voices have been silenced. We have been, told we to stand down. And instead we're not doing what the Bible tells us to do. It tells us to pray for our leaders. They're not God, but they are serving us. They are protect us. And I have a higher responsibility to God because of this calling. I'm going to have to be accountable for the votes that I take, the laws that I propose. So, but that's between me and God. But our job is for everyone else, all of us, is to pray for our leaders, to support our leaders, to find ones that are aligned with biblical values and support them and encourage them. And he is calling. My story is not unique. Again, our governor has a similar story. I'm on a much higher level,
Yeah.
but he is calling people out of their comfort zone and he is saying, this is what I want you to do. And he's that's what he's doing now and I'm seeing it all over. And so we can't be afraid of it. We have to just go for it and really do trust God. And I will say this that I've never in my whole life been so tethered to God
Mm.
than this journey. Everything I've done, I've never been so close to him because I still remain out of my comfort zone. But the really amazing thing is when I look back on my life, even the time I was a little girl, how he has used every single thing that I've gone through, every experience, he's used that to form me for this time, which has been incredible to look back like that.
I love the humble beginnings of it, I always had this image in my mind of people. We all have the sphere of influence.
Yeah.
Um, and some people are pining for the greater influence. And it's like, okay, God, once I get to this level, I'll be able to do more for your kingdom. But you already had a sphere of influence, and now yours is elevated because you've got it into government. But
Wow.
um, I think your story is going to encourage a lot of people because it happened. Even the Moses example, like I love those kind of stories because it's like, you know what? They're not forcing it.
Now
In fact, they're having to be tethered and clinging onto God more to be able to make it through the day.
and he was just out doing he's out tending the sheep,
Yeah.
and God tapped him on the shoulder. And that's what was me. That was me. I was just out doing my thing, and he tapped me on the shoulder. And I know he's tapping a lot of people, and I know they're wrestling with it, and I understand the fear. I completely understand the fear. And I understand not me, choose someone else. Moses said that,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, and everybody's got we all have our own levels of comfort zone.
right.
Like my very first episode on this channel was with Dean. He works at a pharmacy and he just prayed, Lord, use me more and, make me more bold in my faith. He's not working at a Christian pharmacy.
Yeah,
And it's amazing, by him just taking a couple simple steps,
right.
like God using him every single day as he prays for people as they come get their medication.
Oh my
And so
gosh.
I love, yeah, praying for that boldness and
Right.
acting on it,
Yeah.
and just seeing what God does. That's what I love about these stories is like, we're not bragging on you. We're not bragging on me.
Yeah.
We're bragging on how God, we took one step and then God did the rest. And he wants to do that and wants to take us outside of our comfort zone.
He does. He does.
Like a little more exciting than.
I mean, it really is. It is. It's amazing. And it's been fun. I mean, there have been some of my highest highs have been in this journey, and I look back even on the 4 years I've been doing it, I'm like when I look back on my Instagram and see some, I'm like, "Gosh, how did I even do that?" You know, and I realized, like, he really has just navigated this whole thing, and so
Well, I think that's anything else you want to share? I mean, that you think would be like a story that will inspire someone? I mean,
well, what I really tell people, here's what I say to people all the time is that every Sunday in church, the churches are filled with people praying, God, what's my purpose? You know, what should I do? What do you want me to do? And, you know, I just feel like there's so much, you know, the harvest really is plenty. There's so much to do and there's so many things you can just get involved, you know, even if for people that are thinking about politics, like you know, start door knocking for a candidate. Look and see who's and every year there's somebody's running for something.
yeah.
So find out a campaign, go and check out the different candidates and the one that aligns with your values. Volunteer, be a door knocker, make phone calls, stuff envelopes. There's always plenty to do in a campaign, and then and but do get involved and not be afraid, and not be afraid to speak, you know. And we are ambassadors, and we are light, as you said, and we're salt, and we have to be bolder and not and we can do it through love. You know, it's not our job is to love. It's the Holy Spirit's job to change hearts and draw people close. Our job is to love. And so there's a high calling on us to just be the ones that love. And even, you know, with my opponent, I pray for my opponent. You know, I don't have any animosity to her towards her. She's believes in what believes, and she's doing what she feels she needs to do. So she's not my enemy. You know, it's just, but if we just sort of stay the course and do what God asks us to do, which is to love people and to be honorable, and I just think I think He's going to be all those people that are praying for
Mhm.
their purpose and something to do. God is gonna, He's gonna show up.
What I love about that is, you refer back to being light of the world, and we don't have a darkness problem. As my pastor says, we don't have a darkness problem, we have a light problem. And if every Christian, I'll call it out, like turn off the TV, turn off the 24-hour news cycle. We all know what's wrong in the world.
Yeah,
We know too much what's wrong with the world.
exactly.
Like, what can we do today just to make the world a little better? And we don't have to be the president, but we all have a sphere of influence and go be that light of the world.
Right. There's a great, Hebrew word, and it's Hineni, and I actually have it in the Hebrew letters. I have 2 pillows, one in my Richmond office and then one in my home district office, and Hineni is the Hebrew word that means, "Here I am."
Mm.
And so just if we every day say,
Here I
"Hineni,
am,
here I am,"
hands open.
hands open,
That's
Hineni.
beautiful. That's a great way to end it. Well,
So
how can people learn more about?
they can find out more about me at teamtata.org, teamtata.org, and I did that because it's not about me, it's about a team,
Yeah,
and I'm just partnering with people to do the Lord's work, and, you know, it's great to get and if people have questions, you know, I'm always happy to encourage them
yeah.
and share with them how, you know, to go about this because they're really God is looking for people, the harvest is plenty.
People are willing.
Yeah.
Well, I know that the words that you said are going to inspire people, and so thank you so much. And if you know someone who this would encourage, send it to them. I'm kind of, don't share it to everybody. Share it to that one person that God's placed on your heart. So, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.